Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever, whenever you're watching. I am King Matua with the Matua Boys Podcast. And today I would like to welcome you to our show. We have something very special going on. We had a couple of guests swing by, some faces that some of you might recognize, some faces that are very special to us. And we just wanted to give you a fresh take on what it's like being brothers. And so we had them come on to share the dynamics in their family, from being sons to grandparents. We think you'll really enjoy this conversation and hopefully give us a couple of stepping stones to move on and invite some other people onto the podcast and get some fresh takes. You'll still hear from us once a week, but this is something we're going to start doing from now on, just to mix it up, have some fun. Really enjoyed this conversation we had with the one and only OG Matua Boys. Let's get to it. All right, we'd like to welcome our guests. We'll let them introduce themselves. So we will start with the elder of the two. We're going to need your name, age, where you claim your origin is, the birth order, where you lie in the birth order of your immediate family, and your current familial status. So where you are in life as far as you're married, you're a parent, you're a grandparent, and so on and so forth. Pass it over to you.
My name's Eddie Matua. I'm 57 years old. Born in Provo, but now residing in West Jordan. I've been married now for close to 31 years. Father of 3 boys, and we are grandparents to 4 girls, and soon to have another one coming in September. So I'm the second oldest of the 8 siblings. And I think that's about it.
All right. And you said, I didn't know you were expecting another one.
Just found out Ty and Bridian.
Hey, congrats,
probably
Ty.
in September-ish. So
That's awesome. All right, next.
All right. Seti Matua. I am 55 years old and born in Fullerton, California, but raised primarily here and in Samoa. I am third out of the 8 children, so I'm right after Eddie. And a grandfather to 4. And, of course, you guys are my 5 sons. And I think Kenyon and Rachel have one on the way as well. No. Next year.
Next year.
2025.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. For those who can't see me, this is Kenny, and I'm off screen, but I wanted to keep going a little bit more with introductions. We'll go back to you, Uncle Eddie, and then back to Seti over there. Really quick, just give us another little background. Doesn't have to be super long as far as education, if you went to college or not, and kind of a career field that you're in right now or you've been in, or your life.
So I graduated in 1983 from the church college in Western Samoa. Like Seti mentioned, we did live in Samoa for a bit. After my oldest sister graduated, Mom and Dad decided, you know what, let's take the family to Samoa. So spent almost 5 years there, almost 6 years. Served an LDS mission, and then came back here and found Kelly and started a family back in 1992. We got married, so we're going into our 31st year. I've been working most of my adult life. I did a little stint at Salt Lake Community College, but started to pursue, the work life, and started out just kind of getting my feet wet in different fields, and currently I'm a bus driver for the Canyon School District, and I absolutely love it. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I also graduated from Church College of Western Samoa, also known as Pesenga, in 1985, and also served an LDS mission there. After my mission, I came home to the United States and did a lot of start and stop with college and also a trade school, which I eventually finished. Did a stint as a medical assistant, if you can believe that, years ago, but found my way into corporate training, became a business analyst, and eventually a project manager for several software companies. So I currently work for a global software company as an implementation project manager, and I've been doing that since the early 2000s.
Yeah, so as far as what we've done as a podcast as brothers, we've talked a lot about growing up in the Matua home, if you guys have listened. And so this is going to be really interesting for us to hear, especially. People have seen our inside of what it's like to be a brother in the Matua home. And so we've got the OG Matua brothers here. And so we wanted to kind of get your take. What was it like growing up? Hardships? What did you love about it? And yeah, obviously you have a different circumstance because you had sisters, but we still want to hear what it was like growing up.
I'll go first.
Okay, do it.
So, my sister and I, we were both born in Provo. Our parents were going to school at BYU. That's where kind of we got exposed to a bunch of people that they were surrounded with while they were going to school there. So after I was born, not shortly after that, we moved to California, and that's where Seti and Darius were born. And then I think it was 1973, we ended up back here in Utah, and the youngest sister at the time, Mandy, was born. And then got an opportunity through the church, because Dad worked in the genealogical department for the church. And they sent us to Samoa to start the genealogy program back in 1976. And we spent a year just traveling the islands, and Dad would do these classes to teach the Samoan people how to actually do genealogy. And so that exposed us to kind of life in Samoa. And, growing up, it was, kind of a working class family that just kind of struggled paycheck to paycheck. We always shared rooms, always passed down clothes, and sometimes haircuts were really, really bad because Dad didn't know how to cut hair, and Mom just said, "You know what? Let me give it a shot," and the shot was what you got. So we had a really close relationship as family growing up. It seemed like every time in our home, we had cousins, extended family that lived with us. And when we were in West Jordan, it was a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, unfinished basement.
With an unfinished basement and 1 bathroom. And at one point, we had Grandpa, my mom's dad, living with us, my mom's sister living with us, and then a bunch of cousins. At any point, we'd have 5 to 6 cousins that were living with us in this 3-bedroom home and 1 bathroom. So you can just imagine the fights trying to get bathroom time. So. But it was a great upbringing. We didn't know we were poor because we made do with what we had, and our parents always instilled in us a love of making do with what you had.
Yeah, I'll try to fill in some of the gaps, and if you have questions, feel free to ask.
Sorry, wait, one more time. Uncle, how old were you when you guys moved to Samoa?
So 1982, so I was barely 15.
Okay.
When we moved to Samoa.
And Dad, you were?
I was 13.
13? Okay.
Yep.
All right, yep. So Dad, if you want to go with your...
Yeah, I'll try to fill in some of the gaps, and like I said, if you have questions, feel free to ask.
Okay.
I think for us, we weren't much different from many Samoan American families here in the U.S. at the time. And as Eddie mentioned, when we were here in Utah, there weren't a lot of Polynesian families here. I think there were a lot of Tongan families or more Tongan families than Samoan. So we knew a lot of the Samoan families from Provo all the way to Ogden. And we would get together the first month of every Sunday and also the first Saturday of every Sunday. Every month, just to get to know each other and And that's how we built a lot of good relationships with some of the original Samoan families here in the valley. When we went to Samoa, I don't know what Eddie's experience was like, but I was American before I was Samoan. So what that means is I was basically thrown into this culture and this language that we had no clue what was going on, what we had to do in order to survive. But that is an experience that I think all of us cherish and will always remember, because it gave us an opportunity, especially when I served my mission, to really embrace and love our language and people and also our culture. So we always joke, and we joked back when we first moved there, that it was a rough experience the first year, but once we got past that first year, man, it was the experience of a lifetime. So it's great.
Would you guys say when you moved to Samoa, were you treated differently?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In what ways? In what ways?
Because we were the kids from America, they just assumed that we were rich and that we were privileged. And it was tough. That first year, I told my mom, I do not want to be here. I want to figure out how to get back to the States, because we were treated differently. The one thing I do say is we knew the language, but that didn't help. That didn't help us make friends
Or speak the language. Yeah.
Because you're saying you knew it as in
we could speak the
you could
language.
speak it?
Yeah, we could understand. Yeah. But it was one of those things where, because we spoke with an American accent, and we mispronounced words all the time. We didn't know the context of most words, because there's conversational Samoan, but then there's proper Samoan, and even a chiefly language that we had no clue what was going on. So we were being mocked by 6 or 7-year-olds because we couldn't really speak the Samoan that they spoke. So that was rough. But I will say this about our people, that when they see that you're putting the effort in, they will allow you the opportunity to be
slack in the line.
Yeah.
Give you guys a little bit more slack.
You become one of them when they see that you're putting the effort in. But if you don't, then obviously you're going to have a really rough time.
So I know. So when we moved from West Valley to Lehigh, obviously, in a lot of ways, not as drastic of a change. Pretty drastic from the multicultural West Valley to the pretty not ethnically diverse Lehigh. But the one thing that kind of helped a lot of us make friends and make some really good friendships outside of church was sports. I could say if I wasn't playing football, I probably wouldn't have. I would have been alone all the way up until close to the end of high school. So what were the things that your family had that kind of helped you wiggle your way into being more accepted or finding more friends in Samoa? Or even when you moved from Utah to California or vice versa back, just at any stage in your life, what have you used as kind of that bridging?
Both of us are very
Yeah.
athletic. And
Well, you more than me, for
I don't
sure.
think so.
well, the one thing I can say is our parents, and in particular our dad, he was very athletic. But he wasn't able to kind of hone that talent, because when he came from Samoa, I think he was 14 years old, ended up in Star Valley, Wyoming. And he was one of 2 colored kids in high school. And so it was very...
The other one being another Samoan, right?
Another Samoan, his cousin.
Swa'upea.
And, he wanted to play baseball. He wanted to play football. But Mama Taggart said, I don't want my boys to get hurt. So he never pursued his athletic pursuits in high school. But I knew growing up that my dad could ball. He could play volleyball. He could play softball. He just was one of those kind of guys that just picked up stuff, right? So when we went to Samoa, you guys probably don't know this, but my first love was basketball. Basketball was my life. It was everything I did was to hone my basketball. And I use that as a way to gain friends in Samoa because basketball really wasn't a thing in Samoa. And I would always spend my time in the gym. And after a while, the kids started coming around. And they're like, man, who is this kid that's, playing basketball? And from there, it helped to be more accepted, right? To have this athletic talent that kids are looking at like, wow. Because in Samoa, it's the national sport is rugby. And then everything else, cricket, all the European sports, right? But basketball was kind of just a new thing. And everybody plays volleyball. Everybody in Samoa plays volleyball. So I just used basketball as a means for me to get to know people. And, as the years went on, basketball became just this huge thing. And I hope that I had a small part in introducing a lot of our friends that we now, they're lifelong friends because of basketball.
Would you say the same, Dad? Or
Yeah, pretty much. And I think because Eddie had such a passion for basketball, as his younger brother, I just naturally gravitated towards the sport. Mom and Dad encouraged us to play other sports. And back in the day, because we were so poor, Mom and Dad couldn't put us in organized sports. So we ended up playing a lot of times against our own cousins or some extended family, like the Samoan population here in Utah. And a lot of our friends were phenomenal athletes. And we just kind of carried that workman's or a blue-collar mentality when we moved to Samoa. And basketball became kind of the vehicle for us to, introduce ourselves. And it allowed us an avenue where we kind of stood out from the rest. Those of us who played basketball, because nobody else played the sport. So we ended up representing Samoa in several tournaments. Eddie ended up playing in the South Pacific Games and other international tournaments, and it brought a lot of visibility to not just us, but also to our faith.
Okay, how so?
Well, only Mormon kids had basketball standards. So
it's just the ones at the church college.
Yeah, the only place you could see was, if there was a
churches.
chapel, there was a basketball standard. So LDS kids ended up being the majority of the people. When you had friends from New Zealand and Australia who would come and visit, and they would play as well. But for the most part, the basketball community was LDS.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. Okay, so just going into it, our first question, outside of your introductions, it's kind of more of a family dynamic question and how that's evolved. So we'll start with Dad. Dad, we'll start with you on this one and then go the other way. So the question is, how has your understanding of family evolved as you've grown older?
Great question. So I think all of my siblings will tell anybody who asks that I was the number one jerk in our family. So
Middle child, though, right?
Middle child for a long time. So I had this, and the dynamic at that time was an older sister, older brother, and a younger brother, younger sister. So I'm stuck in the middle. I'm a guy, nobody cares. So I had kind of that chip on my shoulder, and I had a lot of anxiety in social settings, so I was very shy. And I think back in the day, I don't know if Eddie feels this way, but because in most cases, I was the only colored kid in my class, sometimes the entire grade.
This is where?
In West Jordan.
In West Jordan, okay, just clarifying.
Yeah. So it just always felt like, in my mind, in my elementary age mind, I just always felt like there was this microscope. And so I always had to act different and be different so that, and I had some phenomenal friends in our neighborhood who were very kind and loving and accepting. And those guys really helped me through those difficult years, those junior high years. But because of that, I was just always like angry at everything. over the years, and I think your mom has a lot to do with this as well, and you boys, you know I was very heavy-handed when you guys were young. But when I started my own family, I always told myself when I get married and have kids, I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to translate some of the things that my parents taught us that I liked, and maybe not the things that I didn't like, learn from those experiences and try to be better. I don't know if it worked, but in the course of raising my own family, I realized a lot of things that I did with my siblings when I was younger, I needed to improve that part of myself so that my relationship with them would be better than it was when we were kids. Because I can tell you many instances when my sisters would cry, my brothers would, we'd get into literal fist fights because of things that I said and did. So I'm hoping that over the years I've softened a bit. Age has a little bit to do with that as well. But I love my relationship with my siblings more now than I ever did when I was a kid.
All right. And then, okay, I can repeat the question. How has your understanding of family evolved as you've grown older?
Well, as you know, in the Polynesian culture, family is everything. And growing up, like I said, we had, extended family that lived with us. And so it was, as far as our immediate family, it was kind of a weird dynamic because we always had other people living in the house. So the relationships that we formed were not just between us as siblings, but with cousins and uncles and aunts. And so we just never knew a small family. And, most of the cousins that we have, in particular on my mom's side, they are like siblings to us. And, just to kind of piggyback on the experience in West Jordan, we were the only Samoan family, the only colored family in our area.
Yeah, besides the Hunts, but they eventually moved to Rose Park.
Yeah, so when it came to church and community and whenever you heard Matua, you knew which family it was. Because Dad at the time also served in, I think, 2 different bishoprics. And so our church experience, our family experience, our life experience, it was hard at times because, again, you're the only colored face usually in your class. But, again, growing up, we had an amazing ward. We had an amazing stake family, and, we just really didn't feel like outsiders. But let me say this about your dad. He was,
oh boy,
he was a hothead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But I was always so jealous because everybody knew Seti because it's the Samoan name, right? When they see us, when they see me, they're like, "Hey, Seti."
There's Seti.
It's Eddie.
Eddie and Seti.
But I was always jealous of Seti because, for whatever reason, all the girls liked Seti.
Oh. Whoa.
And I was like, dang, dude, I'm this basketball dude, why don't I get any of the love? So, but
It was probably the poems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a soft and tender heart. And let me say this about Eddie, though. Everybody loved Eddie for the right reasons. Just humble, just a good all-around guy. I don't really know that girls liked me more or anybody liked me more, but I do know growing up that I always envied and was jealous of Eddie because everybody loved Eddie. So,
well, I don't know. But yeah,
you didn't miss.
We had a great family life. Christmases were hard because we had no money, right? So whatever we got, we just cherished. Like I'll never forget the first time I got a rubber basketball. And that really I was like, wow, now I can pursue my passion dribbling this this orange ugly basketball. And I took that thing everywhere because we lived right next to the elementary school. So we spent hours. And the only reason we'd come home is when Grandpa would duck his head out the window and whistle. And all the kids in the neighborhood like, oh, Matua kids got to go.
Yep.
Right. So
Going along those lines, what is in those times in your lives, whether it was elementary school, junior high, or high school, what was one thing that your parents, whether it's a one-word value that they stressed on you a lot, to now has shaped you to who you are now?
I don't know. I would say right off the bat, and I think this is kind of something that came from our grandfather, our paternal grandfather. Little guy, but he was very whip smart and very a disciplinarian. But I would say it's humility. My parents were not big on outlandish things, well, because we didn't have the money. But also, when there's that someone saying that when you be careful how you walk and how you talk because everybody's looking. And I think at that time, growing up, we were, and remember this is after the Watts riots, so there was a lot of things happening culturally and racially. And I kind of go out on a limb and say, my parents migrated here, but we migrated from California to here. So there was a subculture of Samoans that moved from California to here. And I think there's a subculture still, and we're building more subcultures over the years. But my parents would always say, wherever you go, just remember who you are and always be humble. And every time we would be in public settings, and I think a lot of Samoans were this way as well, they would just make sure that you behave because it reflects on your family. So I would say humility is one of the big things that was ingrained in us. Yeah.
I think the word that comes to me is faith. We always had the church. And again, it was our maternal grandmother who became a member of the church, and a few of her children. And then my paternal grandparents. And it was because of the church and their interactions with missionaries that both of our parents ended up in the United States. Again, I think I said this, Dad ended up in Star Valley, Wyoming. And my mom came to the United States through New Zealand and then Hawaii and then to the United States, to California. And the thing that binds us as members of our family has always been the gospel of Jesus Christ. So they ingrained in us faith. Now, for whatever reason, some of us have a little bit more faith than others, and, that's not a knock on anybody. It's just choices that we've made. But they always, 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 their testimonies were so strong. And, I've built on that, and I hope that, I've been able to build upon my own faith in the Savior Jesus Christ. But, that's just one thing that our grandparents and parents taught us was faith in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And by the way, when I say humility, it doesn't mean that I was always humble.
No.
Because I got into a lot of trouble because of my pride. But I think that's the thing that my parents taught us the most, that helped us with all the other things like respect and just hardworking.
Knowing your place.
Ethics, yeah. Knowing your place and always helping out the one who is less fortunate than you. So,
all right, we'll take it. We'll do something that make lighten up the mood a little bit. So now we're gonna go. We'll start with Uncle Eddie, and we'll say, what was your favorite time that you can remember that your brother got in trouble?
Oh,
and then we'll flip it and go the other way.
Let me count the ways.
Where do you start?
I think it was a pretty serious, but now that I look back on it, I just laugh, because my dad was a very quiet, soft-spoken. I mean, you knew you were in trouble when Dad raised his voice. And I don't know what set him off, but Seti did something. And I've never seen my dad move so fast. Was trying to get a hold of Seti because he was gonna kill him. I mean, he had that look in his face like, I'm gonna kill that little guy. Well, Seti saw my grandfather sitting on the couch. He crawled behind Grandpa Ukai and just cowered there. And my dad and my grandpa looked at him and said, that's enough. And I've never seen my dad go from 60 down to 0 in no time at all. And later, as I was, we were talking about it, I'm like, bro, you could have died today.
Again.
Like, I know. So that, now that I look back on that experience, I'm like, man, I've never seen Dad so mad. And this guy, I think Seti was probably 9 or 10.
Yeah, I had one of those events every year. So I'm not
But that one was the worst because I've never seen my dad so mad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to see my grandfather just jump in action and say, and it was just that. It was, that's enough. So that respect again, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
That's interesting because we don't get very many stories of who our great grandfather. We got one recently from Bishop Matua over here about grandpa in the club.
Yeah.
We've gotten a couple now, but it's fun to get those stories. Okay, so Seti, what's one where you remember Eddie
getting in trouble?
Yeah.
Unlike me, he never got in trouble. And it would piss me off all the time because I'm like, how do I always get in trouble? But this guy never gets in trouble. And I think that's just, it's an innate trait that Eddie always had, to never get in trouble. I think the only time he was close to getting in trouble, we had some cousins come up from California, and they liked to play video games. But back then, there wasn't a video game in your home. You had to go somewhere to play
like
video
arcades.
games. Yeah. And
I remember this.
yeah, I just remember I wasn't allowed to go because I would probably get in trouble if I'd gone. But the cops showed up at our house in West Jordan, and we had done everything we could possibly do to make sure that never happened. But that happened that night, and it was because they were out past curfew, and they must have just been having fun, and the cops brought them home, and that's when my dad and my uncles were just livid because they had been out too long, and nobody knew they left, right? So, and they were playing video games at a gas station. So I think that's the only time I can think of where Eddie almost got in trouble. But it wasn't even anything they did. It was because the cops were being
Guilty by
super
And the
association.
cousins, just so you know, were Bill Wilson, Jerry Wilson,
Okay, so we're naming names now.
Philip Tola.
You can tag them on social media when we post it. I think that's an oldest brother thing because I think I learned pretty quick how to skirt around, and when the situation was taking a turn, I was like, okay, this is my time to exit, and then you just hear everything go down in the background.
Poor
as I walk
Chase.
out of the
I think
room.
you're right.
Chase and Micah got it. Chase and Micah, they're usually on the bad end of that.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a good. Kenny, you got another one?
Yeah. Let's stay along those lines. Talking, just referencing to us as boys. Really quickly, Seti, if you want to start, tell us about your family, how many kids you have. I think you already told us how long you've been married. But a question I think your wives would love to hear is how you met your wife and how that all went down.
Well,
We have to go.
probably very similar stories because we all met our wives at the Bay of all places. But Jen was attending BYU and was doing a great job, getting great grades until she met me. And we dated for...
Were you attending BYU at the same time or no?
No, I
Just
don't.
There?
No, I was just making trouble. I was just on campus for no good reason. We met at the Bay, and we did a lot of dance clubs back then. We dated for over 2 years, and I'm sure Mom has told you this story many times. She just got impatient impatient with me. And that last Christmas before we got married, she showed up at our house. My mom happened to still be alive. She was going through cancer treatments at the time. And I remember after we had our little family thing together, Jen pulled me aside and said, I need to talk to you. So we went up to my room. We're talking, and she said, I really thought you were going to propose to me today. And man, I'm just terrible at stuff like that. And she said, you either decide today, right now at this moment, if we're going to get married, or the minute I walk out this door, you'll never see me again, because I can't go another year without.
That sounds like mom.
Yeah. Which is why I married her. She's very direct, among other things. Yeah, we met through someone that I had gone to school with. And actually, it was my cousin, Manu, who had gotten the roommate's number and passed it on to me. And that's how I ended up calling her a few weeks later, setting up a date, and it's history from there.
So it's supposed to be the roommate, but then
it was yeah. They had this.
Mom makes sure to emphasize that part of her story that it's supposed to be the roommate.
It was supposed to be the roommate, but I called up. The roommate actually answered the phone, and I asked for Jen. So
it was honey, right?
Yeah, good old honey.
Honey.
Yeah. Yep. Not honey for me though.
All right, Uncle Eddie.
We want the Reader's Digest.
Whatever you got for us.
Well,
just for reference, his wife's in the room right now. So. And
Auntie Kelly will make sure that I tell this right. So I was actually dating another girl at the time. And, you know, back when we were coming up in the young single adult life, it was like all about going dancing.
Before you came.
And we ended up at a young single adult dance. And I saw this vision.
The light came down, spotlight.
What?
And it was another girl.
And it was another girl. It was actually Kelly.
Oh.
And I thought,
your current girlfriend was with you at the time?
Yes, my current.
He did a Seti.
Anyway, you know, I had kind of kept tabs on her, and then, for whatever reason, my girlfriend and I, we were having an argument, and I ended up going with a bunch of the boys to the young single adult dance, and I thought, oh, now's my opportunity. But actually, my girlfriend actually, you know, we kind of made up that. So we ended up going together to the dance, and I thought, oh, crap. So I came up with this stupid game. Like, let's see who can get picked up first at the young single adult dance. This is so dumb.
It's kind of embarrassing.
It out there, though. Only got to tell it once.
I went around and I saw Kelly, and she was like, "Oh," I'm like, "Yeah, hey, can I get your number?" She's like, "Well, you want to write it down?" I'm like, "No, I'll remember it."
Yeah. No cell phones at the time.
Yeah.
And I got her number, and I didn't call her because me and the girlfriend were still together, and we did get into a fight a few weekends later, and I ended up with some cousins at the Bay. And
same cousins.
I saw she came in, she walked in, and I'm like, oh, great. We danced the whole night, and then she went her way, and I went my way, and she tells a story. Man, what a jerk! He didn't even like acknowledge me, like after the dance, nothing. So one thing led to another. The girlfriend and I, we kind of parted ways because Kelly gave me an ultimatum. It's either her or me. And so I finally decided to...
These women and their ultimatums.
I finally decided to date her. We got married in May of 1992, May 8th. And we were only together. We had only been married a little over a year, and my mom passed away. So she passed away just before...
A few months before we got married, yeah.
Before you guys got married. But like I said, May 8th of this year will be 31 years and 3 boys and 4.5 little grandkids later. And so it's been a good ride.
So the Matua families are built on the Bay and ultimatums. Then.
That's
Ultimatums.
right. Ultimatums.
Definitely ultimatums.
You in or you out?
Would you think? Do you think Grandma had an ultimatum for Grandpa?
That's
or was he pretty?
That's kind of a funny story too, because the odd part is when Grandpa went on his mission, his first village was Grandma Polu's village. So he got to know her family before she even, because mom was already here in the United States. When Dad finished his mission, someone was waiting for him back in Star Valley when he came home. But my Auntie Emmy picked up Mom from her parents' house, her Hanai parents' house, and took her to the airport with her. And my dad fell in love the moment he saw her. So his plans to marry this other person were off, and from that point forward, they were inseparable. And my mom did not give ultimatums.
No, none.
But I think Samoan women do that too.
So just give it with her eyes.
Yeah.
You knew that you had
Huh?
So we'll start with you, Dad. Which parent would you say you were closer to? And because I know on one of our episodes recently, we talked about how half of our brothers were scared of disappointing Dad, and then a couple of us were more scared about disappointing Mom. So I didn't realize that there was such a divide there. So which would you say you were more, threatened by or more afraid of disappointing? Which one kind of fueled your progression through life?
Oddly, I think I was more, I wouldn't say it's odd. I was more afraid of disappointing my mom. Just because Dad was always working. So we didn't really have a strong relationship with my dad in a different way. I mean, we always loved him. He was always the patriarch in the home, but he was always working, multiple jobs sometimes. And so Mom was always the one who was home with us. And because of that, our relationship was always stronger. And because we loved her, or I loved her so much, the story goes that my mom wasn't supposed to have kids after me. Because all of her pregnancies were very difficult. But she loved kids so much that she had more. And because of that relationship with my mom, I just had such a horrible time ever doing anything that would disappoint her. So whenever I did do stuff that was...
He disappointed her a lot.
Yeah, I did. Too many times. And... whenever that happened, I just felt horrible. And I would cry to her and beg her for her forgiveness. But moms love their kids no matter what, and my mom was no different. So I had to really repent and ask for a lot of forgiveness, especially when she was sick, because I put her through a lot before she passed.
I think for me it probably is Mom. Just because, we were all so close to her, and she really exposed us to family relationships. Mom knew exactly how you related to her, and she would explain, the pedigree. She would say exactly who their parents were. In fact, on my mission, my very first companion was Elder, what's his name now? From the Hunt clan.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So my very first companion, my mom looked at his name tag.
I can see his face.
Because you guys both served in Samoa.
Yep.
Served in Samoa.
So we're at the MTC. We're getting our luggage and stuff together, and my companion walks up, and my mom looks at him, looks at his name tag, and says, in Samoan, "Who's your mother?" And he said the name, and she just grabbed him and hugged him, and I was like, "What's going on here? How do you know this guy?" And then she explained exactly how we were related, and it was through the Hunt clan. So from there, and growing up, my mom would always expose us to our family. And that was one thing she always said, hey, don't ever do anything to shame the family. And I'm like, okay, so that's how we grew up. And so anytime we were out and about and, we met people and we'd interact, that was one thing, I always kept close to my heart was don't do anything to shame the Matua name and the Uta'i name, because she ingrained that in our brain, like, this is important. That's how we got to know all of our aunties, all of our cousins. In fact, when we were dating, we went down to my cousin Jerry Wilson's wedding because I was in the line, and Kelly at the time, my girlfriend, fiance, she was like, all these people. I'm like, yeah, I do. And she's like, how do you know all these people? Because of her. And we actually drove her down with us, and she was starting to get sick at the time. And she was like, that is amazing. I go to my family reunions, and we sit in a little cluster because we don't know anybody in our family. And we get together growing up. Yeah. We get together with cousins. We knew everybody. And that was because my mom. And so for us, don't disappoint mom. Don't disappoint mom. So that's kind of, our experience growing up.
Yeah, and Kingston, if you don't mind, just an explanation of why that was important to our parents, because my dad, his family, he didn't know a lot of his family because once his parents joined the church, they were ostracized. So the part of our family that we do know and recognize are the ones that my dad grew up around, and that's like the Young Yens and the Endemans and the Schwalgers. But what I was going to say is, at the time, and it's kind of tapered off, I think, in Samoan culture, there is no word for aunt or uncle. So when you see an elder in your family, they're considered mother or father, and you're considered their child. So at the time in our community here in Utah, when you went anywhere, if you stepped out of line, and this happened in Samoa as well, when you stepped out of line, someone was always there to correct you. And I think that's why mom and dad, especially mom, because we had most of our interactions were with her. If she saw one of our cousins stepping out of line, she was always the first to say, hey, that's not what you do. And if you continue down that path, then I'm just going to have to smack you around. Because it's what the extended Polynesian family would do for you.
It takes a village, right?
Yeah. A true
Lots of
village.
Yeah. Multiple villages together. All right. I think we're getting close to finishing. So we'll finish with two more questions. So one, what is a message that you would like to share with your posterity that you maybe haven't had the chance to yet, or something that you're working on sharing with your posterity, your kids, your grandkids, great-grandkids, so forth? That you just are afraid that you might not be able to share with them at any time.
I don't know. That's a tough question. Mostly because I feel like maybe when you guys were younger, you'll recall that I had a difficult time with you guys as toddlers and as young people. But it seemed like as soon as you guys hit that 12th year, there was a different relationship between us, because I don't know why, but in my mind, I felt like you guys were too young to understand some of the things that were in my mind. I think, and I apologize profusely to Kenyon a lot, Mom and I both do, because he didn't get to go to Samoa with us in 2019. But I think a lot of the things that that didn't make sense to you before we went to Samoa made more sense to you once we got there. Do you think that's accurate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's one thing to explain to you, hey, this is what we do in our culture, or this is why my people are this way, because there's just so much minutia and it's so layered that you really need to be a part of it in order to understand it fully. Aside from me culturally, like I said, I was American before I was Samoan. Born Samoan, but I was American, and I love that part of me. Aside from that, the gospel culture is also what I've tried to impart as much as possible to you guys in the last few years. Now that you're starting your families and we've become this melting pot within our own home, yes, I want to teach my grandchildren about and hope that they love the Samoan part of them. But I first and foremost hope that they love the Savior. And I try my best to live by example, but sometimes that just doesn't transfer because we're human. But I'm hoping that the human part of me is negated sometimes by who I want to be spiritually. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that is a tough question because you hope that you live your life. I don't know if you've heard this in a funeral. It's the dash, right? What happens between 1967 dash whatever year you finally exit this
sunrise
journey,
and sunset,
right? So what is my dash? I hope the dash definitely contains my spiritual journey. How did I get to the point where I can truly have peace? Because we live in a tumultuous world with lots going on, and President Nelson has said this gathering of Israel is the most important work that's happening in the world. And what am I doing to contribute to that? Well, hopefully I'm just a little cog in the wheel that maybe I'm the squeaky part of the cog in the wheel that just says, hey, just make sure you have a foundational relationship with the Savior. And I hope that's what I'm imparting to my children is, regardless of who you are and where you're at in your life, as long as you have the Savior, your foundational relationship with the Savior, whatever's going on around you, you can be grounded. And I hope that's the message that I can impart.
Okay, so I actually just came with another question as we were saying that. So we'll go the other direction. You both having lost both of your parents now. If
orphans.
if they were here, what would you say to them?
I don't know about Eddie, but I think I would say that I am grateful for and very appreciative of their patience. Because I don't know what they had to go through when they were first time on these shores, first time Americans. I mean, they're first generation Americans for our family. So I don't know what kinds of hardships they had to go through, but they were very patient in the process. And because of that, they were able to help us out making that transition when we moved from Compton, California to here. I was still young, of course. So, and just being patient with us as their children and so loving and giving to people who were in need. And I struggle with that sometimes because I don't know that I could ever do the things that they did in their life, but I try to do things that I know will somehow impact other people with the things that I say or the things that I do. But I look at how we were raised, all the things that we had to go through, and I can think of more joyful moments in our household, even with all the things that were going on, than I can about the difficult things. And that's because my parents did their best to insulate us from the hardships that they were going through and concentrated more on the joyful things. So if I could say one thing to them, I'd say a million things if I could, but I would say thank you for their patience. And because I was a jerk.
I think I would probably say the same. Just thank you for giving us an opportunity. Because, well, if it wasn't for our grandparents and their forward thinking, they sacrificed the relationships they would have had with their children in their formative years, right? Because my father left Samoa when he was like 14. And he didn't have his parents till he basically was done with his mission and starting his life, because
Or proper English.
he ended up, again, Star Valley, Wyoming. When you think about that,
Population 300.
maybe 300,
Yeah.
and everybody knew everybody, and everybody knew everybody's business. So the Taggarts, to bring these two Samoan boys into their home and try to integrate them into this community of, let's say it's white folks, right?
But
They had no idea.
that community embraced them.
And that's the thing,
That was,
is because of their connection to the gospel and why they ended up here, because of a missionary who, out of the love for these two boys, said, I'm going to do everything I can to give them an opportunity. And for the parents to say, yes, let's do that. I mean, that was a huge sacrifice. So thank you to our grandparents who had that foresight, right, to say there's opportunity for you guys in the United States. And that's one thing my grandfather just pounded into us. Opportunity, take advantage of every opportunity. So that would be my first thing, is thank my grandparents. But then our parents, again, for trying to make our Samoan way of life as easy for us growing up as colored people in a white community. And they did it. I mean, they knocked it out of the park, because what we took from America to Samoa and then from Samoa back to America, I mean, there are relationships that we would have never forged if we hadn't gone to Samoa.
yeah, I'm grateful for
Because
that as well.
when you guys and our kids and the Matua kids go out in the world and they ask you, hey, who's your dad? Seti. What? And a big hug and an embrace, and you're like, whoa, what is this? And then you guys
Hopefully.
take a picture, and you're like, you know this guy? Because that happened to Wilson and to Ty and to Garrett, because of the relationships we formed from Samoa, because our parents decided, let's move to Samoa. We're like, what? Especially, again, formative years in our teens.
I know. I was gonna say I didn't realize it was
that
going into
young,
that age.
And we
And
needed that. We needed it.
We
badly,
needed it,
yeah.
but at the time, I was like, there is no way that I'm going to integrate to the people in Samoa, because we're foreigners. We're outsiders, right? But again, they embraced us, and we've forged these relationships that are just solid, right? You know about our guys that get together for dinner, probably once every 3 or 4 months. And when we get together, it's just this brotherhood, right? Because of our parents having the foresight to say, you know what? We need our kids to learn about our culture. And so I would thank them for that, because I am so blessed because of that experience that I had in Samoa. And now, my kids always ask, so what was so great about Samoa? Well, how much time? did we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
Because it really made us who we are. And
I think that's one of the blessings too for our family, was everywhere we went, wherever we were in the world, those communities embraced us. So I think because of our parents' example, we learned to adapt very easily to a lot of different situations. There were hardships, of course, but being adaptable is one of the best skills that you can learn as a person. It doesn't mean that you negate who you are as a Samoan or a Mormon, whatever it is. As long as you're adaptable and you're kind to people, your life will be a lot easier. I know that firsthand because we experienced it many times in the communities that we moved to.
And that was our parents taught us that.
Yep.
So thanks, Mom and Dad.
All right. So for the last one, we've talked about the people who aren't here now, the people who have gone before. So now we have you both here.
We miss our brother Darius, by the way.
We miss him. We'll have to do a part 2 with Uncle Darius.
And our boy Kepi.
And then we can just
that
grill
is
Uncle Darius.
How much time you have?
And our boy Kepi.
So for the last little segment here, we're going to talk about the people in the room. So each of you will have a chance to share whatever thoughts you want with your brother, thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of remorse, whatever it may be. And we'll start with the oldest when you're ready.
You know what? Regardless of what's happening in my life,
Te creci.
I know that I can depend on Seti. Since our parents aren't around anymore, Seti's been, because of his circumstance and being able to go to Samoa. I have not gone back to Samoa since I came, and that was back in 1987. So I haven't been back to Samoa for over 30 years. And I miss Samoa, but I love living through Seti because he's had all these experiences to go back and forth. I think almost every other year you've gone to Samoa since we've been here, and I'm just so envious of that because he's been the one that has kept us connected to Samoa. My sisters have gone, and we love our sisters, but there's just something different about having relationships with our brothers, and for me personally, Seti's been the person that I can depend on for really anything. Again, we love our sisters, and they're solid. But the relationship that you forge with your brother and your brothers, it's just different. And anytime I send a text or it's a phone call, it's nonstop laugh because we get each other, and we throw each other under the bus. We throw everybody else under the bus. And, we have this special bond that keeps us connected regardless of what's happening in our lives. We can always connect with each other, and we always have each other's back. And that's one thing that I've been so blessed with, is to have that relationship with Seti that, is eternal. Since he's lived in Utah County, it's been different because, he knows so many of the Polynesian community in Utah County. So whenever somebody hears my name, they're all like, "Oh, you know Seti?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my younger brother." But at the same time, I'm so grateful for that because he's an example. he's an example, and people just kind of gravitate to him. And, you know, I love that about him because, you know, we're continuing to carry on the Matua name. You know, there's not a whole lot of us. There's not a whole lot of Matuas. Yeah. But, you know, growing up, we were kind of the way station for families that were moving into Utah. And families would come stay with us for a few months until they got settled. And so we got to know a lot of, like, the core families, core Samoan families that came from California, from Samoa, from Hawaii, from New Zealand. You know, and that's one thing, you know, our parents, again, they just opened their home to anybody. And so, you know, we grew up together, and we just did a bunch of things together, and I'm glad that we can continue to do that, especially golfing and, you know, laughing at each other's games. But I just love this guy. So,
thanks, bro. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I would echo the same things that Eddie's mentioned here. There's that people say that your siblings are your built-in friends, and I know that my siblings are an extension of me, and I hope that I'm an extension of them. They're part of my identity. So, as Eddie mentioned, I mean, we run into people that were my mom's and my dad's friends, and they, just like I said earlier, wherever we went, there was always Eddie and Seti, because we were just best friends. And you know, when Darius came along, we did the same. You know, we just have a different bond as brothers, and I think that had a lot to do with the moving around and feeling different from everyone. So we just naturally were very clingy with each other. And Jen always makes fun of me because I always want to be with my siblings.
Most of us. Just kidding.
No, and so growing up, I just remember all the time thinking, I wish I could jump higher like Eddie. I wish I had a nicer shot like Eddie. I wish I was smooth like Eddie. And I wish I was good like Eddie, because I think there was that classic sibling rivalry when we were growing up, mostly from my end because I was second brother, so I always felt like second hand. And by the way, he always got the new clothes. I got the hand until
you always had the cooler haircuts, though.
Yeah, that's true. Just look like a Filipino most of the
time. You were second in the chair, so Uncle Eddie.
That's right. I was like, okay, you're improving, Dad. Anyway, I always had that sibling rivalry mentality because I just wanted to be like Eddie in everything. And as we got older, it became more of, I wish I was more spiritual like Eddie. I have a ton of regrets for a lot of things that I did, but I don't regret any time that I listened to his advice, because a lot of times we have this funny relationship. Samoans, I think Polynesians in general, have this funny relationship with mental health. There's a lot of denial about mental health, but I really think that I had some mental health stuff when I was younger, probably still do, mostly with the anger and stuff, and some of the jealousy that I had in my heart for Eddie, and also for Darius, because I felt like he was always spoiled as the younger brother. He's not going to agree to that, but because of that sibling rivalry, it was like that relationship where you love them, then you hate them, and then you love them even more after that. And we went through that a lot. But as we've gotten older, I look to him even more than I ever have in my life for an example of how to be like the Savior, and a desire to be better than who I am today. And of course, because you guys are my sons, I try my best to make sure that you guys are 10 times better than I was. And I because of that relationship, I want you guys to be better, not just than me, but also help each other, build each other up as well, because that's naturally what happened between us as brothers, that we tried our best to always try to lift each other up, especially when we were down, but even in the times when we were experiencing joy. So I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
All right.
I love this guy.
That's what it's all about. Thank you guys for.
Let's do it again. Thank you so
coming.
much
Yeah,
for letting
thank
us
you for
be
having
on
us.
this. I've been very envious of you guys because you have this avenue to share your wisdom and learning from your experiences growing up in our house, and I hope we can do this again.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely. You guys will be our first. I think our new format will be. We'll do one with us, and then we already have a couple other sets of siblings lined up. So
Yeah.
Oh, no.
we'll definitely put you guys back in the rotation.
Just call our podcast Koko and Bread.
I know that's what we should. We should have stuff on the table.
I'm Koko.
Definitely bread.
All right.
Little sweet, little sour.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. That's crazy. That was an hour-long conversation. We appreciate you for watching all the way through to the end. Please like, subscribe, do whatever we got to do. I think as it stands, we're at 15 subscribers at the time of recording this. Got to hit that 500 at least. So please subscribe, share. The fastest way you can probably share that is texting it out to your family members. Anyone you think would like and enjoy this conversation, or anyone you think would even just click on it, that gives us some boost in our algorithm as well. So whatever you can do for us, we appreciate you. Thanks.